Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy, Sports and Fitness Rants? I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, man. Got another great video for you guys today, as usual. You guys know the deal on this channel. It's all about setting the record straight, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, stopping them from rewriting history. And in this video, we're going to talk about why the 80s and the 90s is considered the golden era of NBA, guys. Now, I've talked to you guys on this channel before, and in my opinion, the golden era of basketball, right, the golden era of the NBA, for me, is the mid-80s into, like, the mid to late 90s. To me, that, like, 10, 15 years, whatever you want to say, the mid-80s into the mid to late 90s, to me, is the golden era of the NBA. And we're going to break it down in this video why I believe that's the golden era of the NBA and what really made it the golden era. Like, really, why is it considered the golden era? We're going to talk about in this video, guys. And I want to thank you guys, man. Everyone across the world, everyone across the states has been supporting my channel. I'm truly humbled, guys, by all the support, man. It means a lot. Like I said, you guys subscribing to my channel, I mean, from all over the place, man. Shout out to all the countries, like I said, that tune into my channel, that support my channel, that share their stories, man. And like I said, that share my videos. And like I said, you guys just giving me the support, man. Shout out to everybody in the membership, anyone that's donated to my channel. You guys know the deal, man. I don't solicit for money in this channel. It's not about the money, the fame for me, man. It's about setting the record straight, guys. We must continue to stand up. So thank you. And you guys know what to do, man. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So yes, guys, like I said, man, for me, when we talk about the golden era of the NBA, I'm sure you guys have heard, you know, of the golden era, the quote-unquote golden era of NBA. I'm sure you guys have heard of the golden era. Now, we can go back and forth, or, you know, we can try to debate when the golden era really technically started. A lot of people say it started in the 80s with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird coming into the NBA, right? And you still had some other stars there, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars and the Dr. J's in the NBA. So a lot of people consider that the 80s, as soon as the 80s came around, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird coming into the NBA as the beginning of the golden era of NBA, right? Magic Johnson, Larry Bird coming in and the rivalry and, like I said, building the game up, right? Making the game more popular now, right? After guys like a Dr. J, you know, took it from the ABA. When the ABA-NBA merger came, it was something like Dr. J that really carried the NBA to the 80s for guys like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird to come in, right? And push the game even further. So when we think about the golden era, we must think about the word or the term golden era. You guys have probably heard of the golden era of bodybuilding or the golden era of film, right? Of movies, right? And a lot of times they'll talk about the golden era of film like in the 50s or whatever the case may be, when, you know, you had classic movies being made, right? It's called a golden era, supposed to be a time period of great excellence, of great prosperity. That's a golden era. Popularity, things of that nature, right? When things were just great, right? Things were going good. This is what we're talking about with the NBA, the golden era of NBA. It was a time of great prosperity where the game was at its highest popularity, at the peak. It reached the pinnacle, the apex, so to speak, during that time. Like I said, I've heard some people say that it started in the 80s. For me, the golden era is really, I believe, 1985. And why is that? Obviously, Michael Jordan came into the NBA, but it's not just about Michael Jordan coming into the NBA. It's about the other players that came in along with Michael Jordan, and also with the players that were there when Michael Jordan came in. To me, the reason why I say the golden era is the mid-80s into the mid to late 90s is because of the players that transition those eras, those decades, the transition of players. When you think about some of these names, right, the guys that came from the 80s and transferred right into those mid-80s and then into the 90s and into the mid-90s, into the late 90s. You think about some of these great players. I mean, that's what really has me, or why I say it's the mid-80s into the mid to late 90s as the golden era for me. Also, we must think about the popularity of the NBA in the 90s. The most popular era in NBA's history, guys, was easily the 90s. Easily. And it wasn't just because of Michael Jordan. It was because of all the talent in the league that they want you to believe. There was no talent. There was no skill in the NBA in the 90s. It was only Michael Jordan. That's not why the only reason why the NBA was so popular. You had great players, and you had great personalities. You had great coaches. Teams ran systems. Guys showed up to work. They didn't have fans ejected. They gave the effort. They played with the love of the game. This is what made the game popular. The game was balanced. It wasn't guys just chucking up three-pointers and dribbling all over the court. It was a balance there. Guys had post-up games. You had high flyers. You had three-point specialists. You had guys that took pride in playing defense. That's what they were known for, just defense. Guys who rebounded. Guys had fundamentals. They played with a heart grit. You had enforcers. The game was physical. You had to be tough to play. It was a man's sport. That added to the popularity of the game in the 90s. But for me, when I think about the mid-'80s, and I say that's the golden era, I talk about the guys who came in the mid-'80s into the mid to late 90s. Let's think about some of the players, guys, and this really will highlight why it's the golden era of basketball. So we think about the early 80s, and we think about guys like I said, Dr. J. You think about the Magic Johnsons. You think about the Larry Birds, the Moses Malones, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Robert Parishes. You think about some of these great players, Maurice Cheeks, right? Some of these guys that played in the NBA in the early to mid-'80s, right? A Sidney Moncrief, a Dominique Wilkins, an Isaiah Thomas, right? These are all-time legends. Legends I'm just mentioned. And then what happens in 1985? What happens? You have a new influx of talent, of superstars coming in the league. You have the Hakeem Olajuwons. You have the Michael Jordans, the Charles Barkleys, the John Stocktons coming into the league now, right? Then you would have guys like Karl Malone, right? You have guys like Patrick Ewing. You have the Scottie Pippens down the road, right? These are the players coming in. Think about the names I just read off. These are some of the great of the greats. Of the greats, man, coming into the league in the 80s. All these guys together. So you have Dr. J, Michael Jordan, George Gervin, Artis Gilmore, Moses Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I mean, think about the names. Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton. You have all of these guys in the mid to late 80s, all playing against each other. The talent level was insane. In the mid to late 80s, guys, the crossover of the new guys coming in, the older guys on the way out, was amazing, guys. Like I said, just think about the names that I just read off. And then we think about the crossover from the 80s into the 90s, right? So you have now the guys like Michael Jordan, the Hakeem Olajuwons, the David Robinsons now coming into the league, Scottie Pippen. You have guys like Chris Mullin, right? You have guys, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, the John Stocktons. Now you have guys like Gary Payton coming in the league. You have guys like Shawn Kemp coming in the league. You have guys like Shaquille O'Neal coming in the league. Alonzo Mourning coming in the league in the early 90s. You have guys like Larry Johnson coming in the league, right? These are the players coming in. You have a Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. You have some of these players, guys, talent coming into the league. A Penny Hardaway, right? A Grant Hill, right? These are the guys coming in from the early 90s into the mid-90s into the late 90s. Think about these names I'm reading off. Jason Kidd, right? You had a Steve Nash coming in the late 90s, a Dirk Nowitzki, a Kobe Bryant, an Allen Iverson, right? A Tim Duncan, a Kevin Garnett. These are the guys coming in the mid to late 90s, the crossover. So you had Kobe going against Michael Jordan and against Scottie Pippen, right? You had Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway going against a Patrick Ewing, a Michael Jordan, right? You had these teams. You had a Jason Kidd out there battling against a Gary Payton. You had a Kevin Johnson out there going against John Stockton. You had Isaiah Thomas going against Magic Johnson. All these names, man. Like I said, the crossover was unbelievable, man. You had the Dikembe Mutombos out there, right? You had great players, man. Great defenders, great big men. You had high flyers, right? You had Clyde Drexler out there, right? You had these guys. That's the crossover. That's what makes it the golden era. This is why the game was so popular. That's why. Like I said, think of the names that I just mentioned, guys, that came in from the mid-'80s into the mid to late 90s. It was absolute crazy crossover. Like I said, man, when you had guys like Michael Jordan going out, the Charles Barkleys, these guys were getting older, the Karl Malones, right? The Hakeem Olajuwons, the Patrick Ewings were getting older, the John Stocktons are getting older, the Gary Paytons are getting older. But now you have a guy like Kobe coming in. You have a Kevin Garnett coming in. You have a Ray Allen coming in, right? You have a Dirk Nowitzki, right? You have all these kids, a Jason Kidd, a Grant Hill coming in. You have all these guys coming in the mid to late 90s to take the league into the 2000s. That's the golden era of NBA, guys. From the mid-'80s into the mid to late 90s, right? I mean, I said essentially up until Michael Jordan retired. When Michael Jordan retired in the 1998 season, the ratings took a hit, right? It just did. That's just the way it went, guys. And the NBA has really been trying to get back to those, those golden era days ever since Michael Jordan left. The game has not been as popular since Michael Jordan left, and we get all that. But once again, guys, it was an influx of talent. The personalities of the 90s. Right? You had guys like Dennis Rodman. You had the Charles Barkley personalities. You had the Shaquille O'Neal personality. Right? You had commercials with Penny Hardaway, right? The little penny dolls, right? You had obviously Michael Jordan and his swag, his personality, his commercials. You had Larry Johnson and the commercials he was doing. Right? You had a lot of these guys out there, the personalities, man. Right? Magic Johnson had a great personality. Right? We think about the trash talk of a lot of these players. A Gary Payton, for an example. Right? You had enforcers back in them days, the Charles Oakleys, the Xavier McDaniels. Right? You had guys that were out there giving the effort, man. That's why it's the golden era. The popularity of the game, the bounce of the game, the coaches. You think about some of the coaches, the Chuck Daly's, the Pat Riley's, the Phil Jacksons, the Jerry Sloans, the Lenny Wilkins, right? The Don Nelsons, the Jeff Van Gundy's. These are some of the coaches that you had in the 90s, man. These are great coaches, legendary coaches that ran systems, man. They ran systems. Larry Brown, Hubie Brown, Mike Fratello. Like, these are some of the coaches I remember growing up watching, guys. And this is why the game was more balanced. Because of guys like some of these coaches. Right? And like I said, guys respected their roles and they played their roles. They didn't try to go outside their roles like these fools do now. Everyone thinks they got skills. Everyone thinks they're a shooter. Everyone thinks they're a dribbler when they're not. The golden era of NBA, guys, from the mid-'80s into the mid to late 90s, man. That's the golden era. Think about all the players that came into the NBA during that time, guys. It's absolutely insane when you think about that. I know I missed several guys' names. I can't think of off the top of my head. But these guys were in the NBA, man. Like I said, out there doing their thing, giving the effort. These are true legends. All-time greats. And like I said, passing the torch from Dr. J to Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant, right? From Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Hakeem Olajuwon to Shaquille O'Neal, right? You're passing the torch to these guys. That's the way it went, right? A Magic Johnson to a John Stockton, right? To a Jason Kidd, a Steve Nash, right? This is the torch being passed down. These guys respected the history of the game, man. And like I said, the fans know the deal. If you grew up watching the NBA in the 80s and the 90s, you know what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying when you talk about the crossover of the great players from one era to another era into another era. The 80s into the 90s into the 2000s. That crossover to me, second to none, as far as the players that came in during those transition years, passing the torch, so to speak, guys. And to me, that's the golden era of NBA basketball. That's when the NBA was at its best, the popularity. And this is what the NBA needs to get back to. It needs to get back to a physical style defense, low-scoring games, 95 to 90. You know what I'm saying? Like a 90 to 87 type game. This is what they need. Bring back their hand checking. Bring back the physicality of the game. Allow defensive players to have more of an advantage. Why are we allowing the offensive guys to dribble the ball like this and travel all over the court and put the defenders at a disadvantage? Doesn't make any sense. They're allowed to manipulate the rules on offense, but on defense, these guys can't do anything. How is that helping the game? The NBA All-Star Game is a joke. When I grew up watching the NBA, guys, the NBA All-Star Game was once again a show that the players put on for the fans. It was for them to go out there and showcase their skills, their talents for the people. That's the All-Star Game was always about, putting on a show for the people. Now, the All-Star Game is a three-point contest disguised as an All-Star Game. And these guys don't take it serious. They're a bunch of goofs. They're not true competitors. And that's why no one respects a lot of these guys, and no one wants to watch these games. That's why this era will never be the golden era. I mean, they even destroyed the All-Star Game, guys. The All-Star Game. They destroyed it. You guys know the deal. Remember, the golden era didn't need an in-season tournament. The golden era didn't need a play-in tournament. The golden era didn't need a minimum amount of games for the players to play. They didn't need flopping guidelines in the golden era of NBA. They didn't need any of this stuff in the golden era to make the game popular. They'd have to incentivize these guys with nonsense. These guys show up to work. They play with that love of the game. They were true competitors. They wanted to beat each other. They went against each other. They didn't team up. They didn't team hop. Once again, they didn't cry and moan for more money. They didn't flop all over the court. They didn't load manage on the fans with no injuries and fake injuries and all this other stuff. They didn't do these things. They weren't more concerned about the outfits they were wearing to the game than the actual game itself. These guys today, they take more pride in picking out an outfit to wear to the game than they actually do about the game plan of the game. So they want to sit on the sideline and wear their goofy clothes, thinking they look cool, thinking they got swag when they have zero swag, these guys. Most of these guys say they have no swag. They got no personality, no charisma, like the guys that I grew up watching. Those are the facts, guys. That's why it's the golden era of NBA, where guys were true competitors and they were grown men and they carried themselves like grown men with the honor, the class, and the integrity and that love of the game. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.